Okay, good morning. Later in his life, Winston Churchill was reflecting on his own time at a boys' school of Harrow in England, and he declared that, thinking back on it, the three greatest challenges he faced as a schoolboy were climbing a wall that was leaning towards him, kissing a girl who was leaning away from him, and making a speech in public. Well, over the last 3 weeks, the entire 9th grade has met that final challenge, and they should feel very proud of themselves. In a moment, we're going to hear from the three gentlemen who scored the highest at the semi-finals last Friday. The freshman speech contest has been going for many years now, and everyone in this theater has either gone through it or will do so in the next 2 years. And while at times it might feel like an arbitrary hurdle to clear, the skill it is trying to develop, that of being able to get up in front of a crowd and speak clearly, logically, and persuasively, even for just a few minutes, is one that everyone will need to acquire at some point in their lives. You all know the challenges this can entail. For the upperclassmen, it might be something you need to do as part of a college application or a job interview. For junior schoolers, it might be the special pleasure of coming up to give an MBA assembly announcement whilst being serenaded by the famous falsetto chorus. But one way or another, it will affect everyone. This year, students had a choice of 3 topics for their speeches: how to strengthen relations between police and the communities they serve, the role played by the media in modern American life, and how the US should interact with Russia and/or China in the 21st century. And an additional goal was to connect any one of these topics to the year's theme of empathy. Our distinguished judges for today are Mr. Russell, Mr. Hamrick, Ms. Ellery, Mr. Tips, Dr. Fuller, and Mrs. Roberts. Thanks to all of them for helping this morning, to Mr. Quinn for making the whole contest run smoothly, and to all the advisors and semi-final judges over the last few weeks. The 3 finalists are Aden Barton, who will be speaking on Russia and China, Matthew Kaplan, who will be speaking on police and community relations, and Stewart Moore, who will also be speaking on the issue of Russia and China. All 3 of them have done exceptionally well to be speaking here this morning, so please give them your full attention, and please welcome Aden Barton as he gives the first of the speeches.
The year is 1995. China has just conducted a series of missile launches against Taiwan. In response, the United States moved in aircraft carriers as a sign of strength, only drastically increasing the risk of war. Luckily, through diplomacy led by the Clinton administration, the crisis was averted. Flash forward to today, 2017. Things aren't much better. Tensions over Chinese activities in the South China Sea are at an all-time high. The historic stalemate over Taiwan threatens to spill over into new levels. As China continues its ascension into the international order, the United States must reevaluate its policy to ensure a peaceful transition. The question is, how can we stop mistrust from leading to conflict that could end the human race? The answer lies in this year's topic: empathy. The United States needs to incorporate empathy into how we diplomatically and economically engage with China to avoid misperceptions and miscalculations that make war inevitable. First, I'm going to talk about the state of the relationship between China and the United States as it stands right now. We've never been friends with China. Starting with our support of their mortal enemy, Taiwan, in 1844, there has been the perception that the United States does not recognize the Communist Party of China as legitimate. Today, the relationship is still dominated by mistrust because China thinks that we are trying to shut them out of the international order and contain them. To be fair, US diplomats say one thing and they do another. We tell China that they have rights in the South China Sea, yet we move in our aircraft carriers to restrict their movements. We say that we want a unified China, yet we continually sell billions of dollars of arms sales to Taiwan to stop Chinese unification efforts. The relationship has devolved into one of competition, where both China and the United States feel like they have to outmatch the other, not only economically, but also militarily. Now, with policies like the 45% tariff being proposed, we are beginning to mobilize around this vision of an evil China that seeks to displace US leadership. To move towards peace, we must ensure a friendly relationship. To make people realize how dangerous these policies are, we need to consider the terminal results of a competitive relationship. The Thucydides trap, a theory developed by an Athenian general and historian, states that the emergence of a rising power that threatens the leadership of a hegemon massively increases the risk of war. This theory has never been more important than today because the United States thinks that China is trying to displace our leadership and challenge our status. This view of a dangerous China has led US diplomats to think that the only way to change Chinese behavior is through military deterrence. However, this attempted military containment of China only causes them to fight back harder. We are locked in a dangerous game of chicken. Every military action we take to try to control China causes a military reaction that increases the risk of war. Roosevelt's policy of carrying a big stick to back up our words only ensures conflict. So if we can no longer hope to maintain peace through our military, then how should we? The answer lies in empathy. The United States was also once a rising power. We were also unsure of our role in the international order as compared to the leading power of the time, Britain. How would we have liked it if, even after independence in 1777, Britain had continually sanctioned the United States for the sole reason to stop us from succeeding in the international realm? Well, we didn't like it. That's what caused the War of 1812. US diplomats need to look back at these historical examples and understand the unfairness within current US policies today. However, empathy is more than just considering the perspective of another person. It's taking action upon that shared understanding that is so important. The United States can do this internationally by offering China concessions that will assuage their fears of US aggression. For example, we should withdraw our military from the South China Sea to show that we trust China will be responsible. We need to make it clear to China that we want to be friends and that we want them to be a leader. Most importantly, we need to base the relationship upon empathy, not upon competition. It is imperative to realize that empathy does not only occur at an individual level, but also should be scaled up to the international level. Only by seeing each other as allies, not as adversaries, can we hope to cooperate to solve global problems. Our president said it best. I've read hundreds of books about the Chinese over the decades. I know the Chinese. I've made a lot of money with the Chinese. I understand the Chinese mind. While it's unclear whether Trump has read 50 books in his whole life, he does have the right idea. Every policy the United States takes towards China needs to be looked at from the other side. Now, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither will a new relationship based on trust. But the sooner we make empathy our priority, the sooner we can commit ourselves to making the world a more peaceful and prosperous place. Thank you.
Black Lives Matter. Well, who said they didn't? Why would there be a movement preaching this message when we already agree with those literal words? Because it is our nation's responsibility to ensure that all men and women are created equal, and apparently some of us don't think we've accomplished that yet. By our nation, I'm talking about us as citizens, but more specifically about our government and their assets in our streets, in our neighborhoods, the police. Now, we've all seen some of it in the news. Police officers allegedly mercilessly beating or killing unarmed African Americans instead of arresting them when they may or may not have committed a crime. Well, what's our response to that? Obviously, we want everyone to feel safe in our communities, but many of us feel that some of these accusations, that some don't think Black Lives Matter, are illegitimate. It's not our job to judge the validity of these accusations, though, but rather to make our insecure feel secure. And that starts by reforming our police system. At the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, the first official policing association, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, formed. Its goal was to end police corruption in America and establish a new system called professionalism, modern era policing. Well, professionalism had its faults. Policing became impersonal. With cars and radios, success became a science. How many arrests did you have? How much crime was reported in your area last year? The downfall of professionalism occurred between the 1940s and the 1960s, capped off by the civil rights protests. Rather than letting these peaceful marches occur, police responded with guns, attack dogs, and mayhem. While police claimed to be upholding the law unbiasedly as professionalism taught them, the American people saw it differently. We all realized that this had to change, and it did. Today's policing system is called community policing. The police realized that they didn't have the trust of many Americans, and new policies attempt to fix that. They don't fix it. Community policing's #1 objective is for police to do more social work, which means less time focused on fighting crime. For a while, this did work. Crime rates were going down, and ideally, police were getting to know members of their community. But things have happened since then. Robert Davis, a retired, unarmed African-American former elementary school teacher, was brutally beaten by police in New Orleans in 2005 for being suspected of intoxication, meaning he was suspected of being drunk. Today, 52% of Americans have confidence in the police, the lowest in almost a quarter century. Chicago alone tallied over 750 homicide deaths in 2016, 150% of what they recorded in 2015, and the most since 1993, the same year that people had this little confidence in the police. It's gotten so bad that several police officers across the country have been killed in all this anti-police sentiment. How can our police officers be effective in doing their job if they're fearing for their lives? We need to tackle all these problems with one solution. If the police officers and the communities can understand that they are the subjects of each other's antagonism, then they can learn to work together. The first step in achieving this empathy is by ensuring that our police forces are representative of the communities that they serve, whether that be ethnically, socioeconomically, and mostly just geographically. Because if police can understand their communities, if they're from those places, if they know the people there, then they can accurately address the problems there, and they can treat people there more fairly. Secondly, we need to establish mandatory meetings between police officers and representatives from their communities. Not only will this allow police officers to get to know members of their communities, but it will allow those representatives to get to know their police officers and feel comfortable with their presence in their streets, in their neighborhoods. Additionally, these mandatory meetings will take the place of a lot of the social work that police have become accustomed to doing, thus making their work hours more efficient so that they can spend more of their work hours focused on bringing the rising crime rates down. It's time to revitalize our police system. When we live in a country where half of us don't trust the police, some of us despise the police, and a few of us kill police, something is wrong. We don't want people to live in fear of law enforcement, but rather feel safe because they have it. Let's build that police force that empathizes with its community and really understands their problems and can truly start a way to fix it. Let's build those communities that empathize with their police officers who have become the subjects of too much antagonism today as well. Because if we can build those police forces, if we can build those communities, then we can build the bridge that binds them together. The bridge of empathy, that bridge of hope, that bridge to a safer America, that bridge to a better America. Thank you.
What if I told you a weapon exists that can cross the world in only a fraction of a second? What if I told you this weapon has the potential to bring down entire systems of critical infrastructure or threaten nuclear security? What if I told you all of the United States enemies possess this weapon and we're pointing it at the US right now? Surely you all would be terrified. But this weapon, cyber attacks, isn't some distant sci-fi fantasy. No, cyber attacks are the new reality, and the potential impacts they could have on humanity are devastating as we further entangle ourselves in this new digital world. Take as an example an incident in 2012 when bank account information from 79 banks in the United States was hacked and posted on the internet. This could happen to anyone. Take an example, for instance, if Mr. Joy were to return home from one of his trips to Beijing to find half of the endowment fund missing. Perhaps some of you, though, were already aware of the threat. Maybe you've seen the map in the dining hall showing the crossfire of attacks around the world, or observed the crucial role cyber attacks played in the last election. You know we must improve our cybersecurity if we are to prevent global war. I believe that to begin this process, we should start with the biggest player in the cyber game, China. Cyber attacks on China are soaring now. According to Reuters, the number of cyber attacks detected by companies in China grew tenfold between 2014 and 2016. China's current attribution technology, which is the ability to detect where attacks are coming from, fails. Because China lacks effective attribution, it makes US-China cyber conflict extremely likely. According to the Department of Defense, attribution is a fundamental part of an effective cyber deterrent strategy. Therefore, the United States should agree to China with mutual forbearance, which is an agreement not to attack each other over cyberspace and offer to share attribution technology with China. Attribution is the only way to prevent espionage from escalating into critical infrastructure attacks, because attribution is key to distinguishing US cyber espionage from other actors. Attribution will bolster China's confidence in their cyber capabilities and get them to agree to mutual forbearance with the US. That will cause China to own up to past attacks. Attacks in China are coming now as well. Without proper attribution, China will perceive these attacks as US aggression and retaliate against the US. This retaliation will just lead to more and more retaliation, causing cascading retaliation, which leads to war. Even though China's overall strategy may be to compete with the US, China will agree to cyber cooperation because their lack of attribution collapses their credibility and it invites attacks. Some may say that engagement won't work. They say China is a cyber predator and only aggressive cyber policies will deter China. These critics think cyber offense is the only way to prevent cyber war, and they think that only aggressive cyber policies will maintain US primacy. These critics think mutual forbearance won't change China's behavior and it'll become more aggressive. But these concerns have limitations. To start off, deterrence does not apply to cyberspace the same way it does traditional warfare. Having both complete cyber control and effective deterrence is impossible. Propping up offensive strategies just continues escalation. Additionally, increased internationalism, fiscal deficiencies, and anti-interventionism all prevent containment from being an effective strategy. Scrapping engagement for containment just leads to war. Thus, United States cyber cooperation can function within a competitive relationship to prevent total collapse. Finally, I would like to address the role empathy plays in this policy. Empathy makes for poor public policy on its own. As Yale psychology professor Paul Bloom explains, empathy can make us biased, tribal, and often cruel. Empathy is activated when you think about a specific individual, the so-called identifiable victim effect, but it fails to take broader considerations into account. While statements that drive policy, such as our relationship with China should be based on having more empathy for them, may gain popularity, these statements can have disastrous consequences when implemented in real life. I think that, however, despite this, empathy can still play an important role in our policies. But I think that empathy should enhance pragmatic policymaking rather than the other way around. The cyber policy does this because it logically uses logic and reasoning to create cyber peace with China rather than emotional reasoning. Take attribution tech as an example. Well, attribution tech is an empathetic policy because it helps the Chinese and helps us as well. The logic for it is based on, it's not based on emotional reasoning, it's based on logic. Therefore, the cyber policy works logically to create peace, rather than using the logical fallacy of emotional reasoning. It creates peace in three ways. It creates peace that comes from mutual forbearance. It creates peace that comes from mutual trust. And most of all, it creates peace that comes from mutual empathy, backed up by logic. Thank you.
Okay. All three of the speakers did an excellent job. A reminder, the prize for the competition is a $250 gift card to Best Buy. Having tallied up all the judges' scores, it was incredibly close, but the winner was La La Land. No, that's not right. The winner... The winner was Aden Barton.
Thanks for your attention. We're dismissed.